We're always telling your stories, and it's time someone tells ours. We're humans first, journalists second. We chose this career to give you a voice. Now we're voicing ours. It's true, journalism has much room for improvement, but not all hope is lost, and we want your trust back by humanizing one journalist at a time. We're sharing with you what we go through to bring you the news. The pain, the tears, the trauma, and the mental health struggles. It's painful, and sometimes we even work 2 jobs to make ends meet. But we all have something in common: the passion, the joy, and the love we feel for storytelling and holding the powerful accountable. That includes holding ourselves accountable. So here are stories from us. This is how we want to help improve the news industry. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo. Hi everyone, welcome once again to the Awakened Journalist and our special project, Media Healers. Today our guest is Corina Hierro. She's a former bilingual Emmy-award winning TV reporter and multimedia journalist. She left the news industry in December 2019, and she is now working to help connect companies with the Latino workforce through a startup called Chamba. Corina has also won several Colorado Broadcast Association's awards, and she worked while she was a reporter and a multimedia journalist for almost 5 years for a station in Colorado. It was a local Telemundo station in Denver. So Corina, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Emiliana, for the space, and happy to be here.
Awesome. Corina, so let's start with why you chose or decided to become a journalist.
I was always a curious person. I always loved helping people, whether it was translating as a little girl or helping out, doing anything that my community, needed help in. I was there. So I know that I went into journalism because I wanted to create an impact, and I wanted to be the voice of the voiceless, because especially in an underserved community, I'm an immigrant, so I saw the struggle firsthand, coming into this country. So I wanted to help out, basically use my talents for the bettering of humanity.
That's amazing. And Corina, can you tell me what, throughout those 5 years as a journalist, what was the most rewarding experience for you? One specific event that you can pinpoint to.
I recall several, from helping people, get money from their employer, or helping victims of wage theft, helping out with funds for a family that lost a loved one and had a GoFundMe page. It's really a rewarding feeling, just knowing that you put in some type of work to create a difference in somebody's life. That was always fulfilling to me. And, hearing from the community a simple thank you was what made my job, worth it.
I agree. It's always nice to get that feedback and that gratitude from the people whose stories we're always telling. Corina, so clearly working as a multimedia journalist is not easy, and we often have to wear multiple hats. A lot is expected from us and demanded, and it's constant work, sometimes extremely long hours. What do you think was one of the most challenging things for you while you were in the industry?
One of the most challenging things was maintaining a work-life balance, which, if you're a journalist or you've been in the TV industry, you know how hard it is to have a work-life balance, because telling stories takes up pretty much your whole day, from coordinating interviews or finding stories to shooting the stories, writing, presenting, picking up your equipment, going back to the station, finishing up whatever web pages you needed to, or web stories you needed to put up or upload. And then sometimes it would extend into the home life when you covered tragic stories or, something that you carried in your head, carrying maybe even sadness into your home space because you're thinking about the people that you talked to that same day. So it was definitely a struggle to maintain a healthy mental state as well.
And what do you think helped you cope with that struggle or with those challenges, especially the mental health aspect of it?
I think unplugging, as much as unplugging was really essential to keeping a healthy mental state, just because you need to unplug from work, and this industry doesn't allow you to really do that on a day-to-day basis. So it was really being conscious and making a conscious effort of disconnecting from news or from the phone or the computer, even though you always needed to be connected, right, to what's going on in the community, looking for stories for coverage. But I think it just really helped to surround yourself with friends and family and having somebody to also vent to, because we know that as journalists, we are humans first, and we need to take care of ourselves if we want to help other people.
Yeah, I agree. Corina, something that I've heard a lot recently, and after interviewing Miguel Bedoy, the newsroom that you were in has, I guess, multiple concerns have been brought to my attention within that newsroom and what the environment was like while you were working there, while Miguel Bedoy was working there. And Miguel Bedoy, along with his colleague Eragdi Adriana Macias, after being fired allegedly unjustly, Miguel Bedoy, and after Eragdi decided to quit because he was being allegedly fired unjustly, decided to file a lawsuit against that particular news station. I was wondering how that environment was for you for the almost 5 years that you were there.
So it wasn't always a toxic environment per se, but I will tell you, it speaks a lot about a company when in 5 years you have 3 different news directors. It was like a revolving door. There was hardly any people that stayed there, past 3, 4, 5 years. So that just goes to show what type of management there was or lack of leadership there was. And things started to get really ugly once you walked into a newsroom and you felt tension, or you felt like whatever you did could be seen as something that you were doing wrong, or you were walking on eggshells. So it was really evident once reports were made to HR. It was really evident that something was going on, and we felt threatened, that something was going to happen with us either being terminated or us getting written up, which it did happen. And it was, for me at least, it was seen as a way of pushing us out.
Okay, and when you say reports were made, you're referring to the reports that Miguel Bedoy sent to HR along with other colleagues. You guys, I believe, sent reports to HR and made complaints to NBC Listens. And that's when you started feeling, in a way, like there was some type of retaliation taking place.
Yeah, I definitely felt like retaliation was taking place, and our efforts to take any of these reports to human resources was not effective at all. We took it to HR, and they said it was going to be confidential, but we started noticing things that we knew, the word has gotten out, or they knew who had made those reports. So I recall like an instance where I was called me and two other colleagues were called into HR because we had called in sick 2 or 3 days in 1 month. And we were consistently asked why we were calling in sick, which is a violation. You were not supposed to ask why your employee is sick. You simply take the sick day. And we were taken to HR, and we were getting questions as far as why we were using our sick days that we rightfully have. We had 11 days during the year to call in sick. And I remember the HR person telling us, you know, just because you have 11 days of sickness does not mean that you have to use all of them. And they failed to realize what was going on, the stress that we were feeling, and how it was affecting our productivity in the newsroom. And I definitely felt like we were not supported. I definitely felt like HR was protecting the company, not the employees. And then it was around that same time that I had gotten questioned from my boss, my former boss, as to why I was calling in sick. And she asked me these questions over the phone and then in person. And when I would answer them, I would say, I have my menstruation. I'm in pain. I can't come into work. Yeah. And when I was taking into her office, she questioned me some more. And then she asked me, as she was looking at her calendar, how often do you get your period? And it was by far one of the worst things that a leader had ever asked me in my 5 or 6 year long career. And I reported it to HR. I didn't see anything being done. But that's when I saw that things were getting tense.
And wow. I mean, one, thank you for sharing that, because that's extremely intimate information. And I noticed you were a little hesitant to say the word. I'm wondering if maybe that has a little bit to do with that certain incident and the fact that a leader or someone in an authoritative position asked you such a personal question, such an intimate question, and led you to, have feelings of shame or guilt because, like as if we weren't supposed to get our period and maybe not have cramps,
Yeah, I felt terribly sick. And also, being in this industry, how your mental health gets affected. Mm-hmm. And even though we were told that it was okay to take a mental health day, once I said, I'm going to take a mental health day as a personal day, she told me, this was so long ago, but she told me that a mental health day is not a personal day. Pretty much disregarding the fact that sometimes you do need days off, being the nature of this industry, which I think these people in leadership don't understand, because they were never out on the field. They were never MMJ. So it's hard for them to understand what we go through. So it was definitely something very discouraging, even though your mission is what drives you. But once you feel like you are not getting appreciated and you are being flexible, but the company's not being flexible with your hours, it starts to wear you off. And we definitely felt the burnout. And as young professionals in our 20s, we were like, this is not normal.
Yeah, and I've seen a pattern with all the journalists, especially the multimedia journalists that I've been speaking to, where they get to a point where burnout is so severe that it's just a breaking point, and that's when they decide to leave the news industry or try to take mental health days off or sick days off or vacation or short-term disability leave to take care of.
And it's terrible to see that so many talented journalists leave the industry, an industry that has made the profession such a hard job. You may recall, 10, 15 years ago, journalists had a cameraman, you had the reporter, or sometimes you had the audio person or the assistant. And now the industry has shrunk the job of 2 or 3 people into one. and sometimes I did get to cover 2 stories. So it was definite 2 stories a day.
In the
And
day, yeah.
yeah, so even doing 1 story a day by yourself is so difficult. Sometimes we didn't get an hour break to eat. And once you, like I mentioned, once you stop taking care of yourself, you stop being able to help other people. And we should always take care of ourselves first. And it's really bad to see, all these journalists, speaking on the same topic. And I don't know that there's anything being done. That's why we're so thankful for spaces like these, right? Because we need to shed light on this problem. And it's happening everywhere. It's happening in many newsrooms, not only in the Spanish networks, but also English stations, big and small.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I love that, I mean, that we have this space obviously to share each individual story, because with what you're telling me, it's just even more reassuring how much of a pattern there is, that often, we're doing multiple jobs, so it leads to burnout. Also, the 2 stories in one day, like if you're not a multimedia journalist and if you are not in the news industry, I just want to reiterate how extremely difficult it is to do one single story in less than 3 hours to get it on air, and then do a second story from scratch, trying to find the sources, the information for that story to try to get it on air on deadline. The pressure is just completely unmeasurable. And that also leads, to a lot of issues mentally and physically, because it also takes a toll on our nervous system. And the fact that we often don't have time to eat because of the amount of work that is put on our shoulders.
Yeah, I remember and I recall in my beginning days with Telemundo as an MMJ, the stress was so bad. I had gotten and experienced my very first anxiety attack. So it was something insane for me because, technology sometimes doesn't work. You're on a deadline. Your stuff is not sending out to the newsroom. You're about to go live. You have all these things on you, all this pressure. And I remember feeling so much anxiety that had never happened to me. But I started to get dizzy. I was really freaking out. I was in my vehicle at the time by myself. And sometimes the answers that you would just get from producers or the news director was like, no, come on, hurry up. You have to do it. You have to go live, without taking into consideration the way that the journalist was feeling. I also remember another time that I had to go cover a 420 event where a lot of people around were smoking marijuana. And I was in that environment. Of course, I got secondhand smoke, and I had told the newsroom, I'm not feeling well, but they were pressuring me to go on air, even though I had said, I am not feeling good.
Wow.
And there's just like that. I can think of many other instances that I have probably, maybe not forgotten fully, but, there's so many things that happened that we need to speak about. And it's insane that this is happening. I don't know where the TV industry is headed, honestly, but I hope it's, things like this, like interviews like these, really shed light on the problems that the industry has. I actually was just speaking to another journalist earlier, telling me the same things. So I'm not sure about where this is all going to go. We need journalism. We need journalists. We need the news being told. We need to know what's going on in our communities. And if there's no qualified people to do so, places and cities and towns are going to become news deserts.
News deserts, and it's going to be merely, government propaganda or a company propaganda, because no one's fact checking the information or trying to tell it in a more informative manner and in a more impartial manner as well. I wanted to ask you too, when you went through those stages of anxiety, What were some things that like helped you get through it aside from unplugging and disconnecting? And how did you work through that anxiety yourself?
I think for me, it was just about calming down and taking a second to just breathe and understand that nobody is going to die if you don't make a deadline. Um, I mean, that's what kept me calm sometimes. Or, you know, when I reached out for help, sometimes I got help, other times I didn't. Um, but it was a constant struggle, especially if you're not eating right, or you're not eating the whole day because there's hardly any time to eat. There was times I had to skip lunch because I was coordinating different interviews, emailing at the same time. I was writing, I was shooting, I was driving from one city to the next. So it's definitely a lot of pressure. And it makes the job not enjoyable. It really takes out, it feels like a toxic relationship. You know it's bad for you, but you're still there. So it really took a toll on my mental health. I'm not gonna lie. Even after quitting, even after I quit the job, I was still having nightmares. I was waking up anxious, if thinking I was on a deadline or I had to come into work, or knowing, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be late and there's no flexibility. Um, it was just insane. I didn't feel taken care of.
Mhm.
And once your employee checks out, it's pretty much a done deal. Employees are what makes a company great. They're your engine. So once you stop taking care of your team members, everything starts, even the morale comes down and nobody's really motivated. And if they do have to show up to work, they do it forcefully
Mhm.
or forcibly. So it's really just detrimental to your mental health, your body. I remember also, at the beginning stages when I was starting as an MMJ, I had gotten these like bumps in my neck that I couldn't get rid of. And when I told the news director at the time and the assistant news director at the time, they pretty much just laughed, and they were like, haha, you're gonna be okay. So even for health issues, it wasn't taken seriously. So we really need to change that, because like I mentioned, we need news.
Mhm. Yeah, and it sounds like you weren't, like you're corroborating everything that Miguel told me in the interview, that we aired Tuesday, that it was just simply a newsroom where there was no support towards you guys as the team, from news directors and upper management, and like your concerns were often minimized and not really taken into consideration. What was the breaking point for you that led you to say, that's it, I need to quit?
For me, the breaking point was, three of my colleagues had left in previous weeks.
Mhm.
Um, and also just the fact that I was getting no flexibility with my hours, but then the company expected flexibility.
Mhm.
So when they expected flexibility on my hours, come in earlier, leave later, or do this and do that, and I was always willing. But then when I had asked the same thing from them, it was a no. So I was like, what am I doing? I felt like I was giving so much and giving up so much for a company that was not, returning that same investment. It was not a give and take. I felt like everything was just getting taken. So I reached a breaking point, and actually the way that I quit was just me sending an email at 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, it was 2 in the morning when I sent an email of me quitting. I said effective immediately. I never went back, and I never got a phone call. I just got an email back saying, we wish you the best. I never got a single phone call or anything like
Oh.
that. So I knew I had made the right decision.
Not even like an exit interview, because
I did not get an
NBC.
exit interview. I did not get a single phone call. I didn't get anything other than an email that said, "We wish you the best in your future endeavors." So I knew that I had left a company that did not care for me, that did not care for my needs, and a company who just overlooked all of the problems that were happening. When 4 people leave in a month and a half, that's very telling of what is going on in that newsroom.
Yeah, that's that's definitely several red flags. And I know, at least for the company, for the Telemundo that I worked for, which was in California, NBC was pretty good about doing an exit interview when I left, and the process was completely different and extremely professional. So I can't even imagine, what you guys all went through. Um,
It
and
was very bad. For some time, I was happy to not be involved in any news station or working for news. And then, to add on to that, the pandemic hit. But I believe everything happens for a reason. I found new projects where I can use my skills, and I'm still working with the Latino community, and I'm on to bigger things. But for me, this was a huge learning lesson, and I'm so glad that we are able to speak about it. And things really need to change if news stations or these news companies want to maintain their integrity.
I agree. I agree. Corey, can I ask you, as a multimedia journalist, I know you worked often more hours than what a regular shift should look like. Do you feel like there was wage theft as well from that news station? Because that's one of the allegations that Miguel and Eragda are also making on their lawsuit.
When we had addressed that we were working far more hours than what our check said,
Mhm.
HR said that it was normal to work from 40 to 50 hours. So being salaried, the agreement was that you're not going to get, paid
Overtime.
extra for any extra hours that you work. It was just a cumulative hourly sheet, basically, where you accumulated off days. So even if you worked 12, 13-hour days, sometimes nobody accounted for that. It was like a free for all situation where, okay, well, that's news, right? You just worked a lot, and that's pretty much it. But there was no bonus for working extra hard or extra long hours. There was none of that,
Okay.
which I don't
Um,
think is fair.
it's not. Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not fair. Especially if you're supposed to get compensated in some sort of way with days off. But here you are getting criticized or laughed at for utilizing your sick days for mental health and other personal reasons that nobody should be asking you about.
Exactly. So by far, our needs were not getting addressed, and it was, like I mentioned, detrimental to our health, our mental state, and that's why 4 very talented people left in a month and a half.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Can I ask you how you're doing now? Obviously, you look great, but how's your health doing? How's your mental health?
It's been great. I ever since I quit my former employer, I don't get sick anymore. I don't have headaches anymore. I have a work-life balance. Even people telling me that I look so much happier. I'm radiating a different energy. Just it just blows my mind how a bad work environment can affect you. It can affect your loved ones. It affected me in my personal life. It's negative energy that you're carrying around. So that's why when I quit, I completely, I mean, of course it took some time
Of course.
to you know rest and to gain my normal again. But once that happened, it's been amazing. Great opportunities have come my way. And even though, you know, there was some bad experiences in my past job, I'm thankful for all the learning experiences. I learned a lot, and like I mentioned, it was not always bad, but there was some instances that, you know, really make you rethink, what am I doing here? But I learned a lot, and it's been so much. It's been so much better for me, and you know, people tell me about it, and I feel it, and it's been great. So if it wasn't because of that, of me quitting, I know I wouldn't have had the opportunities of joining in on projects that I'm working on right now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm proud of you. Happy for you. You are definitely
Thank you.
radiating. I mean, I didn't meet you before, but you're definitely radiating. Um, and I guess just to finish up the interview, I always ask journalists, what is one thing or several things that you'd like to change in the news industry, or you'd like to see the news industry improve? Even though we've already spoken about a lot of that, but yeah.
I want to see more flexibility for reporters, for journalists, um, more free time. I think whoever makes the rules in these corporate jobs needs to take into account the nature of the news industry, and taking into account also, you know, mental health days, enough rest, enough unplugging. Um, because if you're a happy employee, you're going to keep doing your 100% at work. But once your team member starts feeling like they're not getting appreciated, that's when even their quality of their work is going to go down. Their productivity is going to be bad. And I think we really need to change that. I think companies need to realize we are also in a changing world. You know, with a whole pandemic going on, I know many big tech companies are even more flexible with remote work. So I think all of that is very, very important to keep a healthy work-life balance, because once you have that, you're not going to have a problem even extending yourself a few hours here, a few hours there, because you know that your company cares for you, far beyond your, you know, your productivity. They care for you far more than, you know, you're just a number, or you're just an employee who was working tirelessly to get a paycheck. So I think there's many changes to be done. I'm confident that someday we're gonna be able to see those changes, but it takes steps, right? And this is a great step of just even speaking up about it, because it's a changing world, and leadership needs to improve in these spaces.
And embrace the changes that are coming to the industry.
Yeah, I see it just going maybe more, you know, digital. I think even just making the job simpler. I mean, we have great technology nowadays. We can shoot stories with our phones. So I think just technology is going to change a lot of that, but it really starts with people.
Yeah.
Especially in leadership roles. I think maybe better training or better understanding of what we do and how the news industry works is just going to give them a better idea. Because also what we would talk about in at work is how the reporters or the producers inside of the newsroom did not understand the work that the reporters were doing. Why? Because they were never reporters. They were never out on the field. So it has to be a mutual understanding of, you know, the different roles, because once you understand that, it'll become such a better workflow. But if you don't, there's a huge disconnect. And then that's why people end up being super unhappy.
Exactly. And if you can't understand the job that part of your team is doing to build the newscast together, it's just impossible to communicate effectively and to deliver a good product, because your team is simply not, you know, yeah, what you said, there's a huge disconnect.
Yeah, and let's take off the focus of quantity over quality. I also felt that was a huge problem in that newsroom and many others, where you're just trying to keep up with ratings or with clicks or views, that what are you really giving the community? Are you really helping with this information, or are you affecting, your team members or your own community, your city, with the type of information that you're putting out there? Because also, for example, in the news industry, there's a huge focus on crime. And then when we would pitch stories that were actually organizations that were doing something good for the community, they were usually, no, that's like a feature story. We need you to go cover that deportation or that homicide over there. So it's just a really negative space to be working at, and that affects your mental state. So that's just the nature of it. Maybe seeing some changes would be covering more positivity, more positive things that are happening. Not everything is negative. And I know a lot of people don't watch the news for the same reason, because everything they cover is sad stories, tragedies, deportation, homicides, just more crime stories, unresolved situations. So we really need to be conscious about, what we're really putting out there. Is it of value? Are we really making people's lives better with that kind of coverage?
I agree. Do you want to add anything else that maybe I haven't asked you?
I just want to say thank you. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I hope that many people realize the reality of what many of us journalists live through or are currently living through. And it would be great to have people's support in this journey. And I really hope to see real, true changes, because we need them. And that's the only way that we're going to continue to be people of integrity in these industries, and these big companies need to notice what is going on. So I hope this is a step for them to notice the reality of things.
I agree. Thank you so much, Cordy, for your time and for your kind words. And thank you for opening up with us and getting so personal and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in this interview to help others in the news industry heal, and to help make the news industry a better place for the journalists who are still in it.
Thank you so much for the time and space, Emiliana. I really appreciate it, and I hope we keep in touch. And we need to continue speaking up about these situations.
For sure. Journalists, this one's for you, to help you heal, to help you understand your worth, and to help you know you're not alone. So share the love and subscribe to Spotify and YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. The Awakened Journalist is proud to present Media Healers by Emiliana Molina Fajardo.